That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun hung low over Coronado Naval Base, casting long shadows across the wet sand, where SEAL Team 7 assembled for dawn PT. The air carried the sharp tang of salt and diesel from the bay, mingling with the faint, earthy scent of dew on the training obstacles. Lieutenant Elena Vasquez stood at the front of her platoon, her boots planted firmly in the damp gravel, BDUs crisp despite the humidity. At 29, she was one of the few women to make it through Buddy S without a single waver. Her dark hair pulled tight under her cap, eyes scanning the ranks with the precision of a sniper's scope. "Platoon, attention!" The command master's voice cracked like a rifle shot, echoing off the low barracks. Feet snapped together, heels grinding into the grit. Elena's gaze flicked to her right, where Shadow, her Belgian Malinois K9 partner, sat rigid beside her. The dog's black fur gleamed under the emerging light, ears perked, nostrils flaring at the subtle shifts in the wind. Shadow had been with her since handler school 3 years back, a bond forged in the silence of night runs and the chaos of simulated breaches. No leash now, he responded to her alone, a living extension of her instincts. The routine was sacred. 2 miles of oceanfront sprints, then obstacle work on the grinder. Chief Petty Officer Harlan Reyes, the platoon leader, paced the line, his voice steady over the distant hum of a helo warming up on the pad. "Vasquez, you're on point for the wall climb. Shadow leads the scent trail." Elena nodded once, sharp and deferential. Reyes was old school, a 20-year vet with scars from Fallujah etched into his forearms. He respected her quals, top scores in dive and demo, but his eyes always lingered a beat too long, measuring if she measured up in the unspoken ways. They moved out as one, boots thudding in unison against the packed sand. The platoon hit the water's edge, cold waves lapping at their ankles, forcing focus through the burn in their lungs. Elena felt Shadow's steady presence at her flank, his paws slicing through the surf without a splash. He was more than a dog, he was her shadow in the literal sense, trained to detect explosives, track insurgents, and alert on human distress. In the field, his nose had saved her squad twice. Once in a dusty Afghan village where IEDs hid under goat paths. Here in training he was her edge, the quiet assurance that kept doubt at bay. By the time they reached the obstacle course, sweat beaded on Elena's brow, mixing with the salt spray. The wall loomed first, 12 feet of weathered wood slick from the tide. "Up and over!" Reyes barked. Men and women alike gripped the ropes, muscles straining, grunts muffled by discipline. Elena went third, Shadow circling below, whining low, a signal she'd taught him for imbalance. She crested the top, dropping to the mat on the other side, breath controlled, pulse steady, but as the platoon regrouped for the breach drill, something shifted. Reyes pulled her aside near the mock compound, a cluster of plywood hooches ringed by concertina wire. "Vasquez, you're sitting this one out." His tone was flat, official, but his eyes narrowed. "Command's got an observer from JAG today. Female integration review. Don't want any distractions." Elena froze, her gloved hand tightening on Shadow's collar. The observer, a colonel in dress blues, stood at the perimeter, clipboard in hand, watching the platoon with clinical detachment. "Sir, I've run this drill a dozen times. Shadow's certified for—" "Stow it!" Reyes cut in, voice low but edged. "Orders from above. You're benched until the review clears. Take the dog and run perimeter checks." He turned away, signaling the team to stack up. Elena's jaw set, a flicker of heat rising in her chest. This wasn't the first time. Subtle sidelining. The kind that chipped at quals without leaving marks. Shadow sensed it, pressing his flank against her leg, a low rumble in his throat. She led him away, Boots crunching on the shell-strewn path, the platoon's shouts fading behind. The base perimeter was a mile loop, chain-link fences, patrol roads, the constant drone of security cams. Shadow trotted ahead, nose to the ground, methodically sweeping for anomalies. Elena's mind raced, replaying the chief's words. Integration review. It felt like a probe. Testing if a woman's seal could lead without distractions. Her record was ironclad. Deployments to Syria, extractions under fire, but moments like this eroded the ground beneath her. Halfway around, Shadow stiffened, hackles rising. He veered toward a service gate near the admin buildings, barking once, sharp, urgent. Elena followed, drawing her sidearm on instinct, though this was base grounds. "What is it, boy?" The gate was ajar, a maintenance shed beyond, its door creaking in the breeze. Smoke? No, but something acrid lingered, like charred plastic. Inside, the shed was a makeshift storage for training gear, crates of blank rounds, demo props. But in the corner, wedged behind a stack of sandbags, was a small figure, a local kid, maybe 8, curled up with wide eyes and soot-streaked cheeks. A girl clutching a singed backpack, her uniform— wait, no, she was in civilian clothes, a visitor's pass dangling from her neck. The air hummed with the faint buzz of a shorted wire. One crate smoldered from an overheated battery pack, flames licking low but contained. "Easy," Elena murmured, holstering her weapon and kneeling. Shadow sat alert, whining softly, his tail still as he assessed the child. The girl trembled, whispering in broken English, "Fire! Hid!" Elena's training kicked in. Secure the scene, extract the civilian. But this was base. Protocol demanded she radio it up the chain first. She keyed her TAC radio. "Control, this is Vasquez. Perimeter anomaly at grid Echo 4. Minor civilian in distress. Possible fire hazard." Static crackled. Then the response, "Copy. Stand by for security team. Do not engage." But the smoke thickened, tendrils curling toward the girl's face. She coughed, eyes watering, and Shadow nosed closer, licking her hand. A rare break in protocol, his way of signaling no threat. Elena's pulse thrummed. Orders were clear. Wait, but the girl's labored breath said otherwise. Duty pulled one way. Chain of command. No lone actions. Conscience tugged the other. She was a SEAL, sworn to protect, not observe. In that suspended moment, with the platoon drilling oblivious in the distance and the colonel's review looming, Elena made her choice. She scooped the girl into her arms, Shadow flanking them as they burst from the shed into the open air. Alarms wouldn't sound for another minute, but the base had already shifted. Her defiance etched in the salt air, the first ripple in a chain that would test everything she stood for. The salt air burned Elena's lungs as she sprinted from the shed. The girl's slight weight clutched against her chest like a fragile ordnance. Shadow bounded ahead, his paws kicking up sprays of damp sand, barking in rhythmic alerts that cut through the morning haze. The child's coughs rattled against Elena's shoulder, each one a reminder of the seconds ticking past protocol. She could already hear the distant wail of base alarms stirring to life, a mechanical chorus that would summon security teams and unravel the morning's routine. "Control, Vasquez. Civilian secured, en route to Med Bay," Elena transmitted, her voice level despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. She adjusted her grip, the girl's singed backpack bumping against her hip. No response came immediately. The radio hissed with static, the kind that meant layers of command were already peeling back to assess. Elena's boots pounded the perimeter path, veering toward the admin block, where the medical tent stood sentinel, its canvas flaps stirring in the breeze off the bay. Behind them, the shed's door swung shut with a metallic groan, the smoldering crate left to the responding team. Elena's mind catalogued the details for the inevitable debrief. Overheated lithium cells from a training drone, likely mixed with poor ventilation. A hazard, not malice, but the girl's presence there. That was the anomaly. Visitors' pass identified her as Sofia Ramirez, daughter of a base contractor. Slipped away during a tour group assembly. Elena had seen the groups before, wide-eyed kids trailing parents through the non-classified zones. But this one had wandered too far, drawn by curiosity or the pull of hidden spaces. They reached the med tent in under 2 minutes, Elena's quads burning from the uneven sprint. The corpsman on duty, Petty Officer Lang, snapped to attention at the sight, his eyes widening at the soot-blackened child. "What the hell? Vasquez, report." "Smoke inhalation, possible minor burns. Found her in the maintenance shed at Echo 4. Fire contained but spreading." Elena laid Sofia gently on the exam table, the girl's fingers clutching at her sleeve, even as Lang moved in with oxygen mask and vitals kit. Shadow sat at Elena's feet, his dark eyes fixed on the child, tongue lolling from the exertion but posture unwavering. Guardian mode, as Elena called it. He detected the distress first, his nose picking up the fear sweat beneath the acrid smoke, pulling Elena off her assigned loop. Lang nodded briskly, hooking up the monitors. "Stable vitals. I'll call it in." He glanced at Elena, a flicker of approval in his gaze before professionalism clamped it down. "You pull her out solo?" "Affirmative." No elaboration, facts first always. But as Lang worked, the tent flap parted, and Chief Reyes strode in, his face a mask of controlled storm. Flanked by the JAG colonel from the review, now sans clipboard, arms crossed, and a pair of MPs in crisp utilities, he filled the space with authority. The air thickened, carrying the faint ozone tang of the alarms winding down outside. "Vasquez," Reyes said, voice low and edged with gravel. "Stand down. Explain yourself." Elena came to attention, saluting sharply, shadow mirroring her stillness at heel. "Sir, perimeter check uncovered the civilian in a compromised structure. Smoke hazard imminent. I extracted her per oath of protection." The colonel's eyes narrowed, appraising her like a field report under scrutiny. "Protocol requires you radio and hold position. You were benched from active drills, yet here you are, initiating a rescue op." His tone was neutral, but the implication hung. Deviation from orders, especially under observation. Sofia stirred on the table, the oxygen easing her breaths into softer rhythms. She peeled back the mask just enough to whisper, "The dog. He found me." Her voice was small, accented with the lilt of a border town, eyes locking on Shadow with a mix of awe and lingering fear. The MPs shifted uncomfortably. One jotted notes on a pad, the scratch of pen audible over the hum of the medbay fans. Reyes stepped closer, his shadow falling across Elena's boots. "You disobeyed a direct standby that sheds under maintenance jurisdiction, not your lane. Command's already lighting up the net, contractors en route. And the review team's got questions about operational discipline." He paused, glancing at the girl, then back. "Saved the kid, sure. But you think about the chain? One rogue action, and it questions every qual in your file." Elena's jaw tightened, but she held her gaze forward, the weight of her sidearm a steady pressure at her hip. Shadow whined once, low and sensing the tension, pressing his nose to her calf, a silent anchor. She'd weighed it in the shed, wait for the team, risk the child's airway closing from the fumes, or act. SEAL creed echoed in her mind, protect the innocent no matter the cost. But here, in the sterile light of consequence, that choice felt like a fracture in the ranks. The colonel cleared his throat. "We'll need your full statement, Lieutenant. And the K-9's logs, handler reports, scent certifications. This integrates into the review." He nodded to the MPs. "Escort her to Briefing Room Alpha. Chief, secure the site." As they moved out, Sofia reached out a small hand toward Elena. "Gracias, Senora." The word hung in the air, simple and unadorned, cutting through the formalities like a clean rifle bolt. Elena allowed herself a brief nod, her gloved hand brushing the girl's for a split second, contact rare in protocol, but human in its necessity. The walk to the briefing room was silent, boots echoing on the concrete walkway, the bay's wind whipping at their collars. Shadow trotted between Elena and the lead MP, his ears flicking at passing helos, chopping the air overhead. Inside, the room was Spartan. Metal table, chairs bolted to the floor, a whiteboard scarred from dry erase ghosts of past inquiries. Elena sat, detailing the sequence, timestamps, Shadow's alerts, the decision point, while the MPs recorded, faces impassive. By midday, word had filtered through the platoon grapevine, whispers in the chow line, sidelong glances during gear maintenance. Vasquez pulled a kid from a fire, benched or not. Reyes's sidelining order was common knowledge now, twisted into questions of gender and command fitness. The JAG review, meant to probe integration, had veered into ethics, duty's edge sharpened by one woman's choice. Elena signed the last form, her signature steady despite the knot in her gut. Shadow lay at her feet, head on paws, but his eyes never left the door. Outside, the sun climbed higher, baking the sand as the base hummed on. Drills resuming, routines reclaiming ground. But the ripple had started. A single act, defying the bench, carrying the weight of what it meant to serve not just orders, but oaths etched deeper than ink. The reckoning was building, quiet as a tide, ready to test the bonds that held them all. The briefing room's fluorescent hum pressed down like an interrogation light, casting stark shadows across the scuffed linoleum. Eleanor sat ramrod straight in the metal chair, her hands folded on the table, fingers laced to still any tremor. Shadow lay at her feet, his flanks rising and falling in measured breaths, but his ears twitched at every footfall beyond the door. The MPs had finished their notes an hour ago, retreating to relay the tape up the chain, leaving her in the sterile quiet, with only the distant thump of a helo's rotors vibrating through the walls. Reyes entered first, his boots echoing with deliberate weight, followed by the JAG colonel and a major from base command, uniforms impeccable, faces etched with the fatigue of endless reviews. No pleasantries. They took seats opposite, the colonel sliding a folder across the table. "Lieutenant Vasquez, this is preliminary. Full board assembles tomorrow. Walk us through the decision matrix again." Elena met their gazes evenly, reciting the facts as she'd logged them. Timestamp of Shadow's alert at 6:17, visual confirmation of smoke at 6:18, radio transmission at 6:19, extraction at 06:21. The child's respiratory distress escalated within seconds, sirs. Delay risked airway compromise. Shadow's behavioral cues, whine and flank press, confirmed immediate threat. She kept her voice modulated, each word a bullet point, no embellishment. Shadow shifted slightly, his nose nudging her boot, a subtle affirmation, his way of mirroring her resolve. The major leaned forward, his pen tapping a slow rhythm on the folder. "Your quals are exemplary. Bud S, Class 245, 2 combat tours. But this wasn't a hot zone. Base protocol, secure and contain. You initiated unilateral action on restricted duty." His eyes flicked to Reyes, who nodded curtly, the chief's silence heavier than accusation. The sidelining order hung unspoken between them, a thread pulling at the fabric of command trust. Outside, the base stirred into midday rhythm, chow rotations, clanging trays in the mess hall, mechanics wrenching on Humvees in the motor pool, the faint bark of other K9s during yard time. But in here, time compressed, the air thick with the scent of fresh coffee from the colonel's mug and the faint lingering char from Eleanor's BDUs. She thought of Sophia in the medbay, the girl's small hand in hers. Gracias, a word that bridged protocol and humanity. The door swung open without a knock, admitting Petty Officer Lang from medical, his utilities still dusted with exam glove powder. "Sirs, the miner's cleared for discharge. Contractor parents here. Wants to speak." The colonel waved him in, and moments later, Sophia entered, trailing her father, a wiry man in civilian khakis, his face pale under the brim of a hard hat. The girl clutched a juice box, her eyes brighter now, free of soot, but shadowed by the morning's fear. Shadow lifted his head, tail thumping once against the floor, a soft greeting, ears perked in recognition. "Mr. Ramirez," the colonel said, gesturing to a chair, "your daughter's account aligns." Ramirez nodded, his accent thick but steady. "She says the lady with the dog saved her, wandered off during the tour, hid when she smelled smoke. Thought it was a game at first." He glanced at Eleanor, a nod of quiet gratitude. Sophia slid off the chair, approaching Shadow with tentative steps, her free hand extended. The dog sniffed her palm, then licked it gently, drawing a small smile from her lips. The first break in the room's tension, the major cleared his throat. "Young lady, can you tell us what happened next, after you hid?" Sophia looked up, her gaze shifting to Eleanor. "I was scared, coughing bad. Then the dog barked outside and she came in fast. Said easy, like to the dog, but it was for me too." She paused, fiddling with the juice straw. "She picked me up, ran with me and Shadow. No waiting. Fire was close. I felt the heat." The words landed like spent casings on the table, simple and irrefutable. Reyes shifted in his seat, his jaw working as if chewing on the implications. The colonel jotted a note, then addressed Elena directly. "Your handler Bond, with the K9. It's documented as elite level. Did his alert factor into overriding the standby?" "Affirmative, sir. Shadow's trained for human distress markers, elevated cortisol, irregular breathing. He doesn't err on false positives." Elena's response was crisp, but inside, the knot tightened. This wasn't just about the save, it was the bench, the review, the invisible lines drawn around her role. Whispers would spread. Woman SEAL goes rogue, questions Qualls, stirs the integration pot. Ramirez stood, placing a hand on Sophia's shoulder. "If it matters, sirs, my girl's alive because of her. Contractor oversights on us, but that doesn't change facts." The colonel nodded acknowledgement, but his expression remained neutral, the machinery of inquiry grinding on. As they exited, Sophia turned back at the door, her voice carrying clear over the shuffle. "The lady didn't leave me, even when the chief said stay away." The room stilled. How had she known? Eavesdropped in the med bay, perhaps, or pieced from the adults' murmurs. But it pierced the air, laying bare the sidelining in front of command. Reyes exhaled sharply, rubbing his temple. "Kids got ears. This complicates the report." The major closed the folder. "Vasquez, you're confined to quarters pending board. No PT, no comms beyond council. Chief, prep your statement. Include the bench rationale." Elena rose, saluting as they filed out. "Understood, sirs." Shadow followed her into the corridor, the base's pulse thrumming around them, sailors double-timing to stations, the salt-laced breeze gusting through open bays. Quarters were a Spartan cube, bunk, locker, a single window framing the endless blue. She knelt to unclip Shadow's collar, running a hand along his coat, feeling the steady warmth beneath the fur. "Good work today, boy." Word rippled faster than radio traffic. By evening, chow, the platoon buzzed in the mess deck. Trays clattering under low ceilings lit by harsh bulbs. Seamen traded details in hushed tones. Vasquez pulled the kids solo, Jags grilling her now. Reyes's bench order leaked, twisted into debates over fitness. Does she lead the wall climb but not the breach? Loyalty fractured along invisible lines, some nodding respect for the save, others murmuring about chain breaches. In her rack that night, Elena lay awake, the hum of generators vibrating through the bulkhead. Shadow curled at the foot, his breathing a rhythmic anchor. The board loomed, tribunal by morning, careers on the line. But Sophia's words echoed, "Didn't leave me." A child's truth, cutting through ranks, forcing the institution to confront its own shadows. The tide of reckoning swelled, pulling at oaths and orders alike. As the base settled into watchful dark, comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. Dawn broke over Coronado with a muted grey light, the kind that seeped through the barracks windows like fog off the bay. Elena rose before Reveille, her movements precise despite the confinement's weight. Push-ups on the cold tile floor, Shadow mirroring her form at the bunk's edge, his paws silent on the mat. The air in her quarters carried the faint brine of the ocean, mingled with the metallic tang from last night's untouched MRE. No uniform today, just PT gear, as if routine could armor against the board ahead. She clipped Shadow's lead, leading him out for a supervised yard walk, the MP at her flank a shadow of oversight. The tribunal convened in the base's conference hall, a low-slung building ringed by palms that whispered in the breeze. Rows of folding chairs faced a raised dais where the panel sat, the JAG colonel presiding, flanked by the major, a Navy captain from SEAL Command, and a civilian liaison from the contractor's firm. Reporters weren't allowed, classified grounds, but word had breached the wire. A local news van idled at the gate, journalists angling for angles on female SEAL under fire. Elena entered at 800 sharp, saluting the panel, Shadow at heel in his handler vest, the dog's presence cleared as operational evidence. "Be seated, Lieutenant," the colonel intoned, his voice echoing off the panelled walls. The room held 24, platoon members as witnesses, Reyes at the front row's edge, his posture rigid. Elena took the stand, a simple wooden podium under harsh fluorescence that buzzed like distant rotors. Shadow sat beside her, alert but composed, his black eyes scanning the assembly as if cataloguing threats. The questioning began methodically, the major leading. "Walk us through the initial bench order, Vasquez." Chief Reyes's directive was clear. Perimeter checks only. How did that factor into your approach vector? Elena kept her gaze on the panel, hands flat on the podium. "Acknowledged, sir. I executed the loop as ordered. Standard sweeps, Shadow on point. His alert at Echo 4 deviated us to the gate. Visual recon confirmed the anomaly, unsecured shed, smoke visible." She paused as the colonel nodded to an aide, who projected a base map on the screen behind, grids glowing red where the incident unfolded. Reyes was called first, his testimony delivered in clipped tones. "Integration review in progress. Observer present. Vasquez's participation in the breach drill could introduce variables, focus dilution, per command guidance." He avoided her eyes, staring at the map instead. The words landing like spent brass. Murmurs rippled through the platoon section. Petty Officer Lang shifted, his medbay account next. "I arrived post-extraction," Lang stated from the witness chair. "Child presented with mild inhalation symptoms. O2 sats at 92 on arrival. Vasquez's actions stabilized her en route. Delay could have dropped that to critical." His delivery was factual, Gorman's precision, but a subtle nod to Elena betrayed the undercurrent of support. Sofia Ramirez entered next, escorted by her father, the girl in a clean sundress, her visitor's pass replaced by a simple bracelet from the medbay. She climbed into the oversized chair, legs dangling, clutching a stuffed animal shaped like a dog, Shadow's likeness, gifted by a nurse. The room quieted, the panel leaning forward as the colonel addressed her gently. "Miss Ramirez, you understand we're here to learn what happened. Tell us in your words." The girl nodded, her voice steady but soft, carrying over the room's hush. "I followed the big trucks to the shed. It was locked, but I squeezed in. Then smoke came and I hid behind bags. Coughing hurt." She glanced at Elena, then Shadow, who thumped his tail once. The dog smelled me, barked loud. She opened the door, saw the fire starting on the box, said to wait, but smoke got thick. She picked me up quick, ran out with Shadow next to us. Fresh air helped. The captain interjected, his tone measured. Did Lieutenant Vasquez mention the orders? Any discussion of waiting for help? Sophia shook her head. No talking much. Just action. She didn't leave me there. The words echoed, simple as a radio ping, drawing a collective inhale from the witnesses. Ramirez stood behind her, arms crossed, his contractor badge glinting under the lights. The panel conferred in low murmurs, the colonel noting, Child's testimony corroborates the Handler report. K9 alert initiated contact, but the reckoning deepened as external voices filtered in. The liaison from the contractor's firm took the stand, a woman in business attire, her folder thick with safety audits. Our tour protocol failed. Sophia slipped unsecured. But the shed's electrics were base-maintained. Lithium hazard was flagged last quarter, ignored. Her gaze swept Reyes, then Elena. The lieutenant's intervention prevented escalation. A full fire would have breached the admin zone, risked personnel. Outside, the news van's antenna caught the wind, reporters pacing the perimeter fence. A base PA announcement had masked it as a training evolution. But leaks spread, social feeds buzzing with Dick SEAL rescue, anonymous posts questioning the bench. Why sideline the handler during review? Platoon members exchanged glances. One seaman, fresh from Bud S, whispered to his buddy, "She did what we do in the field. Orders be damned if it's life or death." The hearing recessed for lunch, the panel retreating to deliberate. Elena led Shadow to the hall's antechamber, where a vending machine hummed with cold sodas. Lang approached, tray in hand. "Holding up?" His question was quiet under the radar. Affirmative. She accepted a water, twisting the cap with deliberate calm. Shadow nosed her knee, sensing the undercurrent. Through the window, the bay stretched endless, whitecaps breaking under a climbing sun, the world beyond the wire, turning her choice into something larger, a symbol etched in headlines. Afternoon session resumed with character witnesses. Reyes, second in command, a grizzled gunner's mate, testified to Elena's quals. Top of the class in demo quals, twice pulled point on live-fire evacs. Shadows her edge, never missed a track. Oh, but the major pressed. And discipline? History of order deviations? Negative, sir, by the book until it counts. The endorsement landed solid, but the air crackled with the unspoken. Gender in the ranks, the review's shadow. As the panel adjourned for the day, deliberations set for 48 hours, Sophia approached Elena at the exit, her father trailing. "You coming back tomorrow?" The girl's eyes searched hers, innocent probe. "Duty calls," Elena replied, kneeling to Shadow's level, the dog's warmth a buffer. Sophia extended the stuffed animal. For him, he was brave too. Elena accepted it, tucking it into her pocket, the gesture small but seismic in the corridor's echo. Outside, the platoon dispersed, boots scuffing concrete, radio chatter resuming drills. But the whispers persisted. Vasquez, under the microscope, her defiance a mirror to the system's fractures. The base's rhythm held, yet the tide pulled stronger, institutional eyes turning inward, weighing oaths against the chain that bound them. In quarters that evening, Eleanor reviewed her logs by desk light, Shadow at her side, the stuffed dog propped on the bunk. The board's gavel loomed, careers in balance, but Sophia's truth lingered, a child's voice amplifying the moral fault line, forcing reform's quiet stir in the ranks' unyielding order. The second day of the tribunal dawned with a relentless onshore wind, whipping the palms outside the conference hall into a frenzy that rattled the windows like distant gunfire. Elena arrived at 0700, her PT gear exchanged for fresh BDUs, the fabric starched to a knife's edge despite the confinement's monotony. Shadow padded at her heel, his vest adjusted for the session, the stuffed dog from Sophia tucked into Elena's cargo pocket, a talisman of sorts, its faux fur soft against the hard lines of her gear. The MP escort nodded her through the doors, the corridor's concrete still cool underfoot, carrying the faint echo of overnight cleaning crews. The hall filled methodically, platoon members filing in with the precision of a formation, Reyes at the fore, his expression carved from granite. The panel reconvened at the dais, the JAG colonel tapping a gavel once, sharp, authoritative, before the captain from SEAL Command opened with closing arguments. "Lieutenant Vasquez, your actions saved a civilian life. But the breach of protocol raises systemic questions. Integration reviews aren't optional. They're the framework holding this unit together." Elena stood at the podium, saluting before responding, her voice steady over the room's hush. "Understood, sir. My decision prioritized the oath. Protect those unable to protect themselves. Shadow's alert was the trigger. Protocol adapted to the threat." The map projected again, annotations added overnight, timelines overlaid with contractor logs, highlighting the shed's flagged hazards. The major interjected, sliding a printout forward. "We've reviewed K9 integration data. Your bond with Shadow exceeds standards, 0 false alerts in 18 months. But unilateral extraction on base soil, it sets precedent." Murmurs stirred from the platoon benches as the civilian liaison testified again, her voice amplified by a handheld mic. Post-incident audit confirms the lithium cells were overdue for rotation. A full blaze would have compromised adjacent structures, admin, armory adjacent. Vasquez's intervention contained it at minimal cost. She paused, glancing at Elena. From a liability standpoint, her judgment mitigated broader exposure. Reyes shifted, his testimony follow-up curt. Bench was precautionary. Review sensitivity demanded focus. Her quals remain solid, but disciplines the spine. The air in the hall thickened with the scent of polished wood and fresh ink from witness statements. The wind outside gusting harder, flexing the building's frame. Elena's mind catalogued the undercurrents. Support from Lang and the liaison, tension from Reyes, the panel's neutral grind. Shadow sat unmoving, his breath a quiet rhythm, nostrils flaring at the subtle shifts, sweat from a nervous seaman, coffee from the captain's mug. Outside the wire, the news van had multiplied. 2 more idled at the gate. Reporters' shadows pacing under the chain link, their presence a low hum filtering through PA static. Deliberations broke for a brief recess, the panel retreating to a side room, voices muffled behind closed doors. Elena remained at the podium, Shadow's flank warm against her leg, as platoon members approached in 1s and 2s, subtle gestures under the MP's watch. A young gunner's mate, fresh-faced from boot, extended a fist bump, low and quick. "Saw the logs, ma'am? Shadow's nose doesn't lie." Lang lingered nearby, his nod conveying the medbay's unspoken endorsement. Even Reyes paused at the aisle's edge, his voice pitched for her ears alone. "Board's leaning commendation, Vasquez. Play it straight. Accept and move on." She met his gaze, jaw set. "Sir, if it's offered, it'll be for the record, not personal." The words hung, a quiet defiance amid the corridor's echo. The bench order lingered between them, unaddressed but raw. His caution clashing with her instinct, the review's shadow exposing fractures in trust. The panel returned at 1100, the colonel clearing his throat to still the room. "Lieutenant, the board finds your actions justified under exigent circumstances. The K9 alert and imminent hazard override the standby protocol. No formal reprimand, instead a letter of commendation for valor, pending command approval." Applause rippled, restrained, military clipped from the platoon, boots shifting in approval. Sophia, seated with her father in the rear, clapped her small hands, the sound cutting through like a child's clear signal. But Elena's response was immediate, her salute crisp as she spoke. "Thank you, sirs. Respectfully, I decline the commendation." Gasps echoed softly, the room's air charging like pre-storm static. The colonel leaned forward, brow furrowing. Clarify, Lieutenant. This recognizes service. It's not about recognition, sir. The save was duty, not deviation for praise. Accepting spotlights, the bench over the breach in safety protocols. The shed's hazards were known. Focus the reform there. Her words landed measured. Each one weighed, Shadow whining low in echo, a rare vocalization sensing the pivot. Reyes exhaled audibly, the major jotting furiously. The liaison nodded subtly, Ramirez whispering to Sophia, whose eyes widened. The captain pressed, voice even. Declining sets you apart. Awards affirm the chain, loyalty to the institution. Elena held her ground, the podium's edge grounding her palms. Loyalty means truth, sir. Shadow and I acted on instinct honed by the creed. Personal honors dilute that. Let the report drive change. Contractor audits, K9 roles in base security. The panel conferred in sidelong glances. The wind outside slamming a palm frond against the glass, a sharp crack that mirrored the fracture. Sophia stood suddenly, her father's hand on her shoulder, voice piping over the hush. She didn't want the shiny thing before. Said it's for the dog and the team. The room stilled. The girl had overheard in the antechamber yesterday, her child's logic piercing the formality. The colonel suppressed a smile, noting it down. Noted, Miss Ramirez. Your input's part of the record. As the session adjourned, full report to command by end of week, Elena led Shadow out, the platoon parting like ranks on stand-down. Whispers followed. Vasquez turns down the medal, forces the system's hand. News crews surged at the gate, mics thrust toward the fence, but base security held firm. The PA crackling with routine alerts. In the yard, under grey skies threatening rain, Lang caught up. Bold move. Brass won't forget. Duty's not for forgetting, Elena replied, clipping Shadow's lead for the walk back. The dog's tail flicked once, pace syncing with hers, the stuffed toy a quiet weight in her pocket. Quarters awaited, the base's hum unbroken, drills echoing from the grinder, Helos spooling in the distance. But her refusal rippled outward, a quiet wave challenging the rigid lines. Awards as balm or catalyst. The institution stirred, moral fault lines exposed, as Sophia's echo lingered. Truth from the smallest witness, amplifying integrity's cost. By evening, the commendation draft circulated via secure net, command weighing her declination. Platoon chatter in the mess turned respectful. She saved the kid, benched the glory. Reyes reviewed his own report alone in his office, the bench rationale reframed under scrutiny. Elena bunked down with Shadow at her side, the wind lashing the window, rain pattering like suppressed fire. The reform's seeds took root, audits scheduled, K9 protocols elevated. Her choice, a symbol, etching conscience into the chain's unyielding steel. The rain had slackened to a fine mist by morning, veiling Coronado in a shroud that muffled the base's usual clamor. Elena stood at her quarter's narrow window, watching the grey sheets slick the concrete parade ground, turning it into a mirror of polished obsidian. Shadow paced the small space, his claws clicking softly on the tile, nostrils flaring at the damp earth scent seeping under the door. Confinement stretched into its third day, the walls closing like a demo chamber, pre-blast, controlled but pressing. Her refusal of the commendation had hit the secure net like a flare at dusk, lighting up command channels from platoon level to Admiralty desks. A sharp knock broke the quiet. The MP outside announced a visitor from base psych, standard protocol after a declination that rippled so far. Elena opened the door to Dr. Harlan, a civilian contractor in khakis, his notebook slim and unthreatening. Lieutenant, routine check-in. Mind if we talk? She stepped aside, Shadow settling at her feet with a low huff, his eyes tracking the intruder's every shift. The room smelled of wet fur and stale coffee from the pot she'd brewed at 400, the steam curling like unanswered questions. Harlan took the edge of the bunk, gesturing to the chair opposite. Your board transcript circulating. Bold stand. Most take the award and file it under lessons learned. His tone was neutral, probing without pressure, the kind honed for handlers facing post-mission shadows. Elena sat, elbows on knees, her hands clasped to channel the restlessness. It's not about boldness, Doc. Accepting glosses the cracks. The shed's hazards were logged months back. Contractor flags ignored, bench order sidelining quals during a review. Reform needs teeth, not medals. He nodded, jotting a note. The pens scratch a faint rhythm under the patter outside. And the personal cost? Platoons splitting. Some see you as the creed incarnate. Others worry it erodes unit cohesion. Eleanor's gaze drifted to Shadow, who pressed his head against her calf, a warm anchor amid the chill. Cohesion, Rhea's word in the hearing, laced with the unspoken fear that her defiance questioned his call. Whispers in the yard had reached her through Lang's discreet updates, loyalty tested, bets on her next posting. The session wrapped in 20 minutes, Harlan's parting words a quiet probe. Duty's a long deployment, Vasquez. Isolation's the real hazard. She closed the door behind him, the latch clicking like a chambered round. Shadow whined, circling her legs, his fur damp from an earlier supervised walk. She knelt, running fingers along his ears, feeling the steady pulse beneath. We're good, boy. Hold the line. But the knot in her gut twisted. Refusal wasn't just words. It isolated her in the ranks, a lone operator without backup. By midday, the mist burned off, revealing a sun that baked the puddles into steam rising from the paths. Elena's radio crackled to life, cleared for supervised PT, a concession from command pending the full report. She geared up, shadow at heel, stepping into the yard where the platoon ran circuits under Rhea's watchful eye. Boots thudded in unison, the air thick with exertion and salt, distant helos chopping the horizon. Heads turned as she joined the perimeter jog, nods mixed with sidelong glances, respect edged with caution. Reyes fell in beside her after the first lap, his pace sinking without effort, voice low over the squad's rhythm. Admiral's office pinged me. Your declinations flagged for review. Could bump you to instructor billet or worse, reassign Shadow. The words landed flat, no malice, just the chain's inexorable pull. Elena kept her breathing even, eyes on the track's curve. Understood, Chief. If it's the cost of the audit push, log it. He grunted, veering back to the formation, but the exchange lingered like radio static, trust frayed, but not severed. In the chow hall that afternoon, the steam trays hummed under heat lamps, the scent of rehydrated stew mingling with fresh bread from the galley. Elena queued with her tray, Shadow tethered outside under MP watch, his bark's occasional punctuation to the mess's buzz. Lang slid in across from her at a corner table, his fork pausing mid-air. Heard the psych visit? Holding? Affirmative. She speared a potato, the utensils clink, steady. Platoon solid? Lang glanced around, voices low at nearby tables, debates on the bench order. The save's heroism. Mostly. Some brass hats up top want the award forced, optics for integration, but Sophia's dad's pushing back, contractor boards auditing sheds base-wide now. Elena nodded, the reform's first fruit bittersweet. Her refusal had amplified the hazard logs, but at what price to her lane? Word from the gate filtered in by evening. The news crews had doubled, anchors speculating on SEALs stand against glory. Base PA kept it locked down, but social feeds leaked. At Vasquez' refusal, trending in military circles, anonymous posts praising the creed over commendations. Elena reviewed it on a secured tablet in quarters, Shadow's head in her lap, the screen's glow casting blue shadows on the walls. One post caught her. A retired chief's take, she did what we all swear to, no shine needed. But the girl, her words sealed it. Night fell with a clarity that stripped the stars bare over the bay, the water's lap a distant murmur through the vent. Elena lay on her bunk, Shadow curled tight against her side, his warmth cutting the chill. The Admiral's decision loomed by week's end. Reprimand, transfer, or quiet vindication. Her refusal stood as a marker, etching conscience into the system's gears, but isolation gnawed. Rhea's warning, the platoon's divide, the chain's slow grind toward justice. A soft knock shattered the quiet, unannounced, against protocol. The MP cracked the door, admitting Sophia and her father, Ramirez, clutching a manila envelope. The girl's eyes wide in the dim light. "They cleared it, Special Lieutenant," she insisted. Ramirez's voice was gruff, grateful. Sophia clutched the stuffed dog, stepping forward as Elena sat up, Shadow lifting his head with a soft woof. The girl approached the bunk, her small hand extended, voice clear in the hush. "You didn't take the award for you, but for me." It wasn't a question, but a bridge. Her words from the hearing, amplified now in private, piercing the weight of refusal. Elena met her gaze, the room's air shifting like a tide turning, the moral fault line yielding just enough for light to break through. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elena Vasquez reach those who still believe in honor. The mist clung to the window like a held breath, the room's dim light casting long shadows across the bunk where Elena sat, her posture straight even in repose. Sophia's words hung in the air, small but unyielding, the girl's eyes reflecting the faint glow from the corridor's emergency strip. Ramirez stood at the threshold, his envelope clutched like a classified brief, the MP hovering just beyond with a nod of cleared access. Shadow rose slowly, his tail giving a single measured wag, sensing the shift from tension to something softer, more human. Elena leaned forward, her voice low and even, the kind used in post-mission debriefs to bridge the gap between facts and feelings. "It wasn't for any one person, Sophia. The oath covers everyone, you, the team, the base." But the girl shook her head, stepping closer, the stuffed dog dangling from her free hand. Her father watched silently, his contractor's calluses rough against the envelope's edge, gratitude etched in the lines of his face. "You carried me out," Sophia said, her accent wrapping the words like a gentle current. "The fire was hot, smoke in my eyes. You and Shadow didn't wait. Now they want to give you shiny things, but you said no. Why?" The question pierced the quiet, echoing the tribunal's probes, but stripped of formality, a child's direct line to truth. Elena glanced at Shadow, who sat alert, his dark eyes fixed on the girl, nostrils flaring at her familiar scent of juice and faint hospital antiseptic. Ramirez cleared his throat, extending the envelope. "From the contractor board, Lieutenant. Audits underway, sheds inspected, lithium protocols updated. Your report pushed it. And this," he paused, handing it over. Inside, Elena found a simple commendation draft, not military, but civilian. A certificate from the Families Association, unsigned, awaiting her mark. No medal, no ceremony, just acknowledgement from those on the periphery, the contractors and visitors who threaded through the base's edges. Sophia tugged at Elena's sleeve, her touch light as a radio ping. "The chief said you refused everything, even when they asked again yesterday, but I spoke in the big room. Doesn't that count?" The words landed like a handler's cue, pulling at the resolve Elena had armored since the board. Refusal had been her stand against the gloss that buried systemic flaws, the bench that sidelined quells under review's guise. But here, in the Spartan confines of quarters, with the rain's patter fading to drips, Sophia's voice reframed it. Not glory, but closure for the saved. Elena unfolded the certificate, the paper crisp under her fingers, the ink still fresh from the printer. "It counts more than you know," she murmured, her free hand resting on Shadow's head. Feeling the steady rise of his chest, the dog leaned in, a low rumble of contentment vibrating through him. Outside, The base stirred faintly. A distant helo spooling for night ops, the wet slap of waves against the pier, but inside the moment held, a quiet pivot from isolation to connection. Ramirez nodded, guiding Sophia toward the door. She wouldn't sleep until we came. Said you needed to hear it again. The girl waved the stuffed dog, its button eyes glinting, before slipping out with her father, the MP closing the door with a soft click. Elena sat back, the envelope in her lap, shadow curling against her side once more. The refusal's weight lifted incrementally, not dissolved, but shared. She signed the civilian note with a steady pen stroke, no flourish, just fact. It wasn't acceptance of the military award. That remained declined, a marker for reform. But this? A bridge for the innocent, honoring the creed without diluting its edge. By morning, the sun pierced the clouds, scattering light across the parade ground like shrapnel from a spent round. Clearance came via radio. Full duty restored, no reassignment, Shadow's billet secure. The Admiral's final directive filtered down, commendation archived per her request, but the audit embedded in base ops, K9 sweeps now standard for maintenance zones. Reyes met her at the grinder during PT, the platoon forming up under a sky washed clean. "Reports closed," he said, voice gravel over the ocean's roar. "Your stand, it's stuck. Integration reviews rewritten, no more benches without cause." Elena saluted, shadow at heel, his paws steady on the damp gravel. "Copy, Chief. Team first." The words bridged their fracture, loyalty mending through action's quiet proof. Platoon eyes followed as they ran out, boots sinking in the salt spray, the air alive with the hum of renewed rhythm. Lang fell in nearby. A nod exchanged, no words needed, the medbay's endorsement woven into the unit's fabric. Words spread beyond the wire, news feeds shifted from speculation to profiles. Vasquez, the SEAL who refused glory for grit, her story a case study in quiet reform. Contractors implemented the protocols base-wide, hazard logs digitized and flagged in real time. Sophia's family visited monthly now, the girl trailing shadow during approved demos, her laughter a rare break in the discipline. Elena mentored the next handler class, her lessons laced with the shed's shadow, instinct over inertia, conscience as command's true north. In the evenings, as the bay cooled under starlight, Elena walked the perimeter with shadow, the chain link humming in the breeze. The base's pulse thrummed on, drills at dawn, halos lifting off, oaths renewed in the ranks. Her refusal had etched a legacy, not in medals but in safeguards, proving one act could realign the chain without breaking it. Sophia's voice, spoken again in that mist-shrouded room, had sealed it. Integrity's cost paid in full, transforming defiance into enduring strength. The wind carried the faint echo of a child's gracious across the water, a reminder that some bonds outlast the orders that test them. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of the woman SEAL, refused every award, until the little girl she carried out of fire spoke again. See you in the next one.